Hey, good morning, folks. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Last weekend, I came back from rural southern Mexico, and they had already done their daylight savings time. And then I came back here, and then you do your daylight savings time this weekend. So I've gone through 2 daylight savings times, so hopefully bear with me on this, because I'm still kind of adjusting to a bunch of travel and some new places for me. I started at Louisiana State University about 9 years ago within the field of pretty much applied physiology for fishes, with a background on environmental toxicology and reproductive endocrinology. And because of my connection with the aquaculture industry and some other things, giving workshops and educating the public and interfacing with the public is something that I've been doing for a little bit, but not with respect to developing an education plan for, say, surfactants or oil spill research. So this was kind of a new avenue for me in terms of information. A lot of the research that really gets funneled down from my lab and my collaborators' labs come from GOMRI, the Gulf of Mexico Research Initiative, Louisiana Sea Grant, the Environmental Protection Agency, as well as a project with the National Institutes of Health, Environmental Health Sciences, through their Oceans and Human Health program. We're actually utilizing Gulf killifish, or Fundulus grandis, across multiple generations. This is a project with Dr. Fernando Galvez and Andrew Whitehead. The outreach components that I want to talk to you about have been fueled not only from just lab productivity from my lab and some other people that I've collaborated with, but also kind of an interest in getting that information out there. One of the other projects that we were working with was with the EPA, that actually we built in an extension and education component to talk about surfactants. From after the oil spill, a little bit before, Dr. Nyman and I have been looking at weathering, the influence of salinity, the time across, a weathering event, and the influences of different surfactants in terms of the decomposition of those. And so we set up some pretty simple mesocosms within a early GOMRI project to look at the influences of time and salinity at different estuarine relevant conditions, 4 to 18 ppt. And we created a lot of acute toxicity curves using Gulf killifish at a series of dilutions, and created a whole lot of these across time. And then we're able to incorporate these into a model to look at the most parsimonious individuals that were contributing to, explaining the acute toxicity. We also coupled this with a lot of biomarkers of different transformation enzymes, CYP1A, EROD, GST, a number of other biochemical endpoints, and really kind of have been doing this as well as doing this with other vegetations within a plant lab on campus. So we had a lot of information on some of these effects, and my experience within marine baitfish kind of led us to working with the Gulf killifish. We've utilized larval Gulf killifish to kind of look at surfactant toxicities. So not only some of the surfactants you might see within, industry, for example, sodium lauryl sulfate or DOSS or DOS, but also with work with Modular Genetics and Iowa State, along with an EPA grant. We're interested in looking at the byproducts of a bacteria, and actually a genetically modified bacteria that produces a surfactant known as FA glue. So my team and me have been doing a lot of these kind of simple toxicological assays utilizing adults and larvae and juveniles, and we also started to work and look at different involvements of surfactant, FA glue, and other surfactants in terms of bioindicators, in terms of hemolysis assays and the like, and really trying to put together a host of peer-reviewed publications and things like you would very well see in poster sessions. Now, the question is, how do we get that over to the community? So, we have a lab where we have a lot of productivity, a lot of other investigations. And you know, the big thing is a lot of the research that we see even at this meeting, even at these posters, isn't really well accessible, or you know, is unintelligible to a lot of people on the street, people that might be, you know, within our communities that might be interested in this information. It's hard for them to get hold of that. A lot of people in our community were concerned with the toxicity of the agents that we're using for remediation, as well as the toxicity that, you know, is already in our environment, and whether those remediation products have equal or greater toxicity. So there's a lot of misinformation or distrust or kind of curiosity that was leading towards a lot of speculation. Also, as we've seen with earlier talks, and you'll probably see throughout this conference, there's a lot of individuals that work and live and recreate in these environments. And so they're interested in their occupational hazards. They're interested in, you know, kind of these exposures that they might see when they're going out with their friends fishing, or out on the beach with their family, or working, say, on a shrimp boat, or you know, in some of the different industries around that area. So we thought of a way to interface with the public. We thought, Dr. Nyman and I, we had this great idea. We're going to go to fishing rodeos, we're going to make education materials, and we're going to go to outdoor expos, people where outdoor is a big focus in their life. Community festivals, for example, the Gumbo Festival in Bridge City, or even Louisiana Shrimp and Petroleum Festival, which that is totally a real festival down in Morgan City. We found out very quickly that we might as well go to Daytona Beach during spring break and talk to these people. The fishing rodeos are really not the right venue. There's a lot of drinking. There's a lot of non-fishing events going on. The outdoor expos, although you have your outdoor audience, there's more vendor focused, more people wanting bass boats and deer blinds. And we're competing with speakers like Ted Nugent. And so we really thought that although it would sound cool to go to these things, we really needed to focus, you know, towards our audience in a little different way. So one of the first things we thought about is how do we develop these education materials? And we thought that we would have what the public needed. And we found out very quickly that that's not right. What we needed to do was survey the community, conduct a number of sessions and public forums, and fill out surveys after those to see what they retain and what they get from our own talk. Some of the things that we have found through surveying, through questions and answers, and even written questions and answers after our own talks at the very beginning of this process, was things we're interested in very, very basic information. What makes substances toxic? What do toxicologists do? What's toxicity? What's environmental toxicity? How does that apply to my everyday life? And so when we went out to libraries, to community areas, we had this idea of presenting some, you know, background information on our acute toxicity assays. Some of the slides I showed before. Honestly, we were at about a C- grade after those, according to our surveys and our feedback. We then decided to kind of switch into looking at things that were more basic to the community, to start that base foundation and then build from there. The big take home from this experience for me, and maybe for others interested in interfacing with the community for the first time in kind of this area, was feedback and surveys are really critical, because then we understand what they want to know. Because honestly, what we think they want to know is probably not what they really want to know. There's 5 different things I want to present from here that I really thought of that kind of helped me learn this process. The first was collaborations. So there was infrastructure around in terms of an education system, in terms of building and developing interactions with community members, with, you know, the public at large, with specific groups. Libraries were a big component of this. Libraries within our community, within southern and central Louisiana, have, as well as probably your states or countries, have resource base, and they serve to educate communities in terms of a number of different areas for outreach. They have rooms set aside, they have programs for continuing education and the like, and they have a lot of subscribers to their, you know, to the information they're putting out. Related extension efforts. So at our land-grant institution, we have a series of extension agents throughout coastal Louisiana through Louisiana Sea Grant and the LSU Ag Center. Being able to talk to them about where to pick a venue, where to actually meet and interface with people, or to get their impact, their kind of idea on what's impacting their community was really, really important. I had worked with some research on marine bait fish and the culture of marine bait fish previously, and I found that marina owners and other stakeholders in that coastal community, whether they were, charter fishermen, whether they were anglers, whether they were harvesting bait or working at marinas, was really, really important. And we were able to use that to put flyers out for other meetings and other kind of informational sessions. Within our state, as well as other Gulf states, there are fisheries summits where a number of stakeholders get together, whether it's shellfish like oysters, shrimp, or crabs, or whether it's your commercial finfish harvesters or your seafood and seafood promoters. There's annual regular conferences around southern Louisiana that we're able to have booths and informational settings. We created a logo. We thought that a logo was really important, and so we would actually tote this big sign, "Ask a Toxicologist," around with us to kind of let people know that they're free to come up to us and ask us, any kind of questions they want. Now, there are a lot of established networks. Some of the biggest established networks that we've really partnered with include the Coastal Roots program, which is an education resource and curriculum development kind of interface for high school and middle school teachers. The Gomery and Sea Grant connections, not only within our state, Louisiana, but also the southern states overall, has been a really big resource. If you've ever seen some of those informational sessions that they give. While we were doing these talks at different libraries, we started to get invites to things like, say, science cafe sessions or Saturday science series for high school kids in like the Baton Rouge area. The Sierra Club actually invited us to a couple events, one at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette and the other over in Baton Rouge. So we were able to get kind of some momentum in terms of, we're here to provide information and kind of talk about a baseline in toxicology and then work that information into relevance in what they're seeing from a oil spill or surfactant or remediation perspective. This is just a big long list of our targeted materials, and that's important because on the upper right is a flyer for Science Saturday, and I was invited to speak at Science Saturday, and just by hearing Science Saturday, I wasn't really aware of what Science Saturday was. But I called around and I asked, and I said, well, it's high school students. And I thought, well, I should probably make it, what's toxicology and why should I care? Because honestly, it was just a bunch of high school kids on their cell phones the whole time. So getting it more engaged for that audience was definitely different than, say, an audience that came there because they didn't need to get a signature sheet for a grade or something. We've done a number of different press releases and interviews through LSU, through LSU Ag Center, through our local NPR station, as well as Facebook and YouTube has served as some resources, but I think those are really limiting in terms of some of the people that we meet at libraries along coastal Louisiana. They don't have access to computers. They don't have email addresses, and understanding that is really important. Having a lot of printed materials and utilizing the good old-fashioned stamps to get those to those people are really, really important, because when you start to say, oh, I'll send you a PDF, that is completely foreign to a lot of people that really need this information. So we've given a few different seminars and evening sessions at libraries. We've given directed talks towards environmental organizations like the Sierra Club. We've served with a couple of Gomery sessions to really kind of get a broad audience to get this information to. At the end of each of these contacts, sending out a survey to the audience to fill out real quickly, and then following up with questions. So if they have a question, if we don't know the answer to that, we can get in contact with somebody who might. Because honestly, there's a lot of people's questions that we might not know. And so we've really tried to curate a library of people within our contacts that have had specific questions, and then call them or fax them or mail them some kind of answer that gets them, in the direction they really wanted to learn from coming out there. Finally, the Coastal Roots program within LSU has been really, really important. We've done a couple of these 2-day workshops. The Coastal Roots program is geared towards high school, middle school, as well as elementary school educators within the state of Louisiana. It spans over probably about triple the number of parishes, but this is the number of parishes that we've met with actual teachers from, comprising around 19 schools total. What we've done is we've created a series of curriculums for the lecture and for demonstrating things like how surfactants work, how simple toxicological assays are working. Some of those include understanding labs that these high school teachers can do. When we first started out, obviously we can't really ask them to look at a vertebrate model, but really, instead of that, we need to look at alternatives. So the ability for them to have amphipods or crayfish, or even to working to a certain degree having duckweed or other plants, to look at how they can incorporate these simpler, more low maintenance animals or plants to assess how that toxicant is working has been really, really important. And also understanding that you can't really have kids and teachers work with oil. So you really have to work with a lot of other surrogates that are a lot safer and a lot more kind of easy to dispose. Has been really, really critical. Once we meet with these guys for this 2-day session, they then have an entire package that they can present to scientists, to students from us, and we've continued to curate that and kind of refine it. This is the 2nd year we've done it, and we're actually going to do it again for a 3rd or 4th time in the coming spring. So I'm not sure if this was really worth your time, but I just wanted to take a moment to kind of relay our own experiences and kind of our ups and downs and what think we've succeeded at and what we've certainly failed at to make things more intelligible or more accessible to humans that are not within academia. So with that, I'll take any questions or comments, and then we'll move on to the next slide. Anything? No? Yes.
Andy Kane from University of Florida.
Hello, Andy.
So I really appreciate the human aspects of the trials and tribulations to provide an effective program that has to diversify itself to meet a lot of different types of audiences. I applaud that greatly. Have you found that your efforts in dovetailing with school systems and the existing curricula that you've clearly spent a lot of effort to do, how sustainable have some of those initial efforts been in terms of you're coming back and then retaining some of that content for them to carry it on independently?
No, it's a really good question. So I guess when we developed this, I had a concern that we would develop a package of things, we'd create a list of supplies and things you can do in the lab, and then it would end up in a box, in a shelf, and sit there because they're all doing standardized testing, okay? So one of the things that we wanted to do was actually make sure that it was being created in the real world. So although the high school teachers can do it, is it being done? And to follow up on that, there was a teacher across the Mississippi River in Port Allen that was going to implement this for the first time, and she wanted us to basically be there, and we were like, well, yeah, sure, we're not doing anything. And so we showed up, and we kind of stood in the back as it got set up, and it was really, really good to see things get set up, but also some things kind of drop off in terms of not being the way we envisioned it. But overall, the teacher completed that kind of section for about a week and has done it again in the next year. And so that's good in terms of sustaining that level. It'll be, obviously the biggest check would be to see if next year, the year after that, it's still being done and carried out. I don't know, it might be kind of hit or miss. Cool, I think we need to move on to the next speaker. Thank you.